What would you do if the grandchildren you helped raise for 8 years suddenly told you they're too busy to help when you need them most? I'm Maggie Thompson, and this is my story about discovering the true meaning of family when everything I thought I knew changed in an instant. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Margaret Thompson, but everyone calls me Maggie. At 62 years old, I never imagined my life would take the turn it has. Looking back, I see now that I spent the last 8 years living for everyone but myself, though I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was just being a good grandmother, a helpful mother-in-law, the kind of person my own grandmother had been for me. I live in Riverside, Oregon, a quiet town where the morning mist rolls in from the coast and settles over our tree-lined streets like a gentle blanket. My house is a 1920s craftsman on Maple Street with a wraparound porch and a garden that's been my pride and joy since I bought the place with my late husband Tom 25 years ago. Tom passed away 5 years ago, leaving me with this house, our memories, and a heart that still aches for his laugh echoing through these rooms. When Jennifer, my daughter, first had Amy 17 years ago, I was over the moon. A grandmother. The title felt like a gift, a second chance at nurturing life. Jennifer and her husband David lived across town in one of those new developments, with perfectly manicured lawns and houses that all looked the same. They were young, ambitious, building their careers. David traveled constantly for his job as a project manager, and Jennifer was climbing the corporate ladder at a tech startup that demanded 60-hour weeks. "Mom, would you mind watching Amy for a few hours?" became, "Could you take her for the weekend?" which eventually evolved into, "She's practically living at your place anyway." Not that I minded initially. I retired early from my 30-year teaching career specifically to enjoy my golden years, and Amy brought such joy to my quiet house. She'd grab crayons from the kitchen drawer I designated as hers and color masterpieces that I'd proudly display on my refrigerator. When Ben came along 2 years later, followed by Lily after that, my role as grandmother transformed into something else entirely. I became their primary caregiver, their constant, their safety net. Jennifer and David would drop them off Monday mornings, fresh from their own weekend, and pick them up Friday afternoons, sometimes later. The kids had their own rooms in my house, their favorite cereal in my pantry, their own hook by the back, door for their school bags. I watched them grow from toddlers into teenagers within these walls. I taught Amy to braid hair on my enclosed porch while rain pattered against the windows. I helped Ben with his science projects at my old oak dining table, the same table where Tom and I had shared thousands of meals. I attended Lily's school plays, her piano recitals, cheering louder than anyone because Jennifer and David were always running late from work or stuck in traffic. Don't misunderstand me. I loved every moment of it. These children filled a void that Tom's death had left, giving me purpose when I might have otherwise drifted into a lonely retirement. My days were structured around their needs, making breakfast, packing lunches, homework supervision, bedtime stories. My calendar was marked with their dentist appointments, parent-teacher conferences, soccer practices, and dance recitals. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being just their grandmother and became their unpaid nanny. Chauffeur, tutor, and nurse all rolled into one. Jennifer would call me in the middle of my day, asking if I could pick up Amy from soccer practice, because she had an important meeting. David would text at 9 at night, saying his flight was delayed and could I keep Ben and Lily overnight. "Of course," I'd reply, every single time. Of course. My friends tried to warn me. Helen Rodriguez, my neighbor for the past 15 years, would watch me from her garden as I hauled 3 backpacks and a cooler full of snacks to my car each morning. "Maggie, honey," she'd say, adjusting her wide-brimmed sun hat, "you're going to wear yourself out." I'd laugh it off, insisting I was fine, that this was what grandmothers do. The Brew and Bean coffee shop downtown became my second home during school hours. I'd sit at the corner table, grading papers for my substitute teaching gigs, drinking too much coffee, and chatting with other regulars about everything except how tired I felt. The owner, a sweet young woman named Sarah, knew my order by heart. Large black coffee with a shot of espresso, because God knows I needed the extra caffeine to keep up with 3 energetic kids. I stopped taking my morning walks along the river. There wasn't time. I canceled my book club membership because meetings always conflicted with someone's something. My vegetable garden, once my sanctuary, became overgrown. Who has time to tend tomatoes when you're helping with algebra homework and driving to orthodontist appointments? Jennifer tried to include me in their family decisions, but in a way that made me feel more like an employee than a family member. Mom, we're thinking of enrolling Ben in that expensive coding camp this summer. Can you drive him there and back? It's only an hour each way. Or, Mom, Amy wants to try lacrosse, but we can't make the weekend practices. You don't mind, right? Each request was phrased as a question, but they weren't really asking. They expected, and I delivered. The children, bless their hearts, didn't know any different. To them, I was just there, available, constant, like the electrical outlets in the walls or the running water from the faucets, necessary but invisible in their day-to-day consciousness. They'd burst through my door after school, backpacks flying, already shouting about their day before their feet crossed the threshold. Grandma, Josh said I couldn't play with the soccer ball, but I got there first. Grandma, I need help with this stupid math problem. Grandma, where's my inhaler? I think I left it at school. I managed their medications, remembered which foods they were allergic to, knew exactly how much milk Ben liked in his cereal, and that Lily only ate the purple Skittles. I keep track of their doctors, their teachers, their friends' parents' names and phone numbers. I was their human Rolodex, their living, breathing calendar, their endless source of comfort and assistance. My refrigerator became a mosaic of their artwork, honor roll certificates, birthday party invitations, and family calendars color-coded by child. Red for Amy, blue for Ben, green for Lily. My own appointments were squeezed into whatever spaces remained, usually scribbled in pencil because they often needed to be erased and rescheduled. Jennifer and David would occasionally express gratitude, but in passing ways that felt more like habit than genuine appreciation. Thanks for watching them today, Mom. We couldn't do this without you. You're the best, Maggie. Empty words that they probably meant in the moment but quickly forgot once they returned to their own lives, their own concerns, their own busy schedules. I started noticing things, small things that bothered me more than they should have. Like how David would drop the kids off and immediately start checking his phone in my driveway, never coming inside unless he needed something, or how Jennifer would text me grocery lists of things the kids needed, assuming I'd just pick them up during my weekly shopping. Or how neither of them ever asked if I had plans, if I was feeling well, if I needed help with anything. 8 years. 8 years of being on call 24/7. 8 years of rearranging my life around theirs. 8 years of putting my own dreams, my own health, my own happiness on hold. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd given away until I started feeling empty, like a well that had been drawn from too many times without being replenished. But I told myself this was normal. This was what family does for family. This was love in action. I'd scroll through social media and see other grandparents posting about their weekly dinners with their grandchildren, their special holiday traditions, their occasional babysitting duties, and I'd wonder why my experience felt so different, so all-consuming, so thankless. The house that Tom and I had filled with laughter now echoed with a different kind of energy. It was still full, still busy, still home to so much love. But something was missing. Someone was missing. Me. I was missing from my own life, lost somewhere between making breakfast for 3 and helping with homework and driving to activities and managing schedules and being everything to everyone except myself. At night, after the children were asleep, I'd sit on my enclosed porch with a cup of tea, looking out at my neglected garden and wondering how I'd become this person. When did helping become a full-time job? When did love become obligation? When did my role as grandmother morph into something that left me feeling invisible in my own home? I'd think about Tom sometimes, wondering what he'd say if he could see me now. Probably something gentle but firm, like, "Maggie, love, you're doing too much again." He always knew when I stretched myself too thin, even when I didn't see it myself. He'd pull me close and remind me that I couldn't pour from an empty cup, that I needed to save something for myself. Winter in Riverside is gentle compared to other parts of Oregon. We get rain more than snow, and the dampness settles into everything: your bones, your clothes, your spirit. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That particular winter, the one that changed everything, felt especially heavy. Maybe it was approaching my 63rd birthday, or maybe it was just the accumulation of years of constant giving finally catching up with me. I started having headaches, persistent ones that acetaminophen couldn't touch. My energy levels dropped dramatically. Some mornings, I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all, even after 8 hours in bed. I'd brush it off, telling myself it was just age, just stress, just the natural consequence of keeping up with 3 active teenagers. Amy was applying to colleges, which meant late nights helping her with essays and applications while also managing Ben's increasingly complex academic load and Lily's social dramas. The house felt smaller somehow, packed with teenage angst and academic pressure and the constant buzz of devices and demands for attention. I remember the exact moment the headache changed from annoying to alarming. It was a Tuesday afternoon, in February. I was making dinner, spaghetti with garlic bread, a family favorite, when suddenly the kitchen tilted. Not metaphorically. The whole room shifted sideways, and I had to grab the counter to keep from falling. The pain behind my eyes was so intense that my vision blurred. "Grandma?" Amy's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you okay?" I forced myself to stand straight, blinking until the room stopped spinning. "Fine, sweetie. Just tired." The lie came automatically, as easy as breathing. I wasn't fine. Something was very wrong. But Tuesday night was Ben's science club meeting, and Lily had a math test tomorrow that she needed help studying for. And Amy was waiting to hear back from her dream college and needed constant reassurance. Over the next few weeks, the symptoms got worse. Dizziness became my unwelcome companion. Some days, walking from the living room to the kitchen felt like traversing a mile. I started making lists for everything because my memory felt unreliable. Simple tasks that I'd done thousands of times, like packing school lunches or organizing backpacks, suddenly required tremendous effort. I called Jennifer once, on a particularly bad morning when I could barely get out of bed. "Jen, I think I need to see a doctor. I'm feeling really unwell." "Oh no, Mom. Are you coming down with something? There's a nasty flu going around. Can you still watch the kids today? David's presenting at that big client meeting, and I have back-to-back calls until 6. Well, maybe you should get some vitamin C and rest when the kids are at school. I'll try to pick them up early on Friday to give you a break, okay? Feel better." The call ended before I could explain that this felt like more than a flu, that I was scared, that I needed help. But I didn't call back. I got up, made breakfast for 3 growing teenagers, and pushed through another day because that's what I did. That's who I was. The reliable one. The constant. The grandmother who never said no. Looking back, I should have insisted. I should have made them understand that something was seriously wrong, but years of conditioning had taught me to minimize my own needs, to put them last. I'd become so practiced at being the caregiver that I'd forgotten how to ask for care in return. It wasn't until I collapsed in the grocery store, right there in the cereal aisle, where I was picking up yet another box of Lucky Charms for Ben, that I couldn't ignore my body's warnings anymore. The fluorescent lights overhead were the first things I saw when I opened my eyes. Bright, too bright, sterile, hospital lights. I could hear monitors beeping nearby, the soft squish of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum, distant voices discussing medical terms I couldn't quite catch. "Mrs. Thompson?" A woman's face came into focus above me. Dark hair pulled back, kind eyes, a stethoscope around her neck. "I'm Dr. Chen. You're at Portland General Hospital. You collapsed at the grocery store. Do you remember?" The cereal aisle. Lucky Charms. The cart tipping over as I fell. Mrs. Davidson from the pharmacy kneeling beside me, calling for help. "Yes," I remembered. "The kids," I whispered, my throat dry and scratchy. "Amy, Ben, and Lily. They'll be home from school soon. I need to— Your daughter Jennifer is on her way. She's bringing the children here." Dr. Chen pulled a chair closer. "Mrs. Thompson, when was the last time you had a full physical examination?" I had to think about that. Really think. Tom and I used to have annual checkups together, but after he passed, I'd been meaning to schedule one, but there never seemed to be time between parent-teacher conferences and soccer tournaments and doctor's appointments for the kids. 4 years ago, I admitted. Maybe 5. Dr. Chen nodded, making notes on her tablet. "We've run some preliminary tests. Your blood pressure is critically high, and your blood work shows several concerning markers. I need to keep you here for observation and run more comprehensive tests." "For how long?" "At least overnight. Possibly longer, depending on what we find." The word longer hit me like a physical blow. Who would make dinner? Ben had that science project due tomorrow. Lily's dance costume needed alterations. Amy was waiting for college acceptance letters, and she always wanted to discuss them with me the moment they arrived. "I can't," I said, trying to sit up. "You don't understand. They need me." Dr. Chen's hand was gentle but firm on my shoulder. "Mrs. Thompson, your body is telling us that you've been pushing yourself too hard for too long. Your health has to come first right now." The door burst open, and Jennifer rushed in, David close behind her. The kids clustered in the doorway, Amy with her arm around Lily's shoulders, Ben hanging back with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Mom!" Jennifer's voice was high with worry. "What happened? The store manager called, said you collapsed. Are you okay?" For a moment, just for a moment, I felt relief. Here was my family, concerned about me, ready to help. Finally, the tables were turned, and I would be the one receiving care instead of constantly giving it. "The doctor says I need to stay overnight," I told them. "Maybe longer." "Oh no." Jennifer's face crumpled, but then I watched something shift in her expression. "Not worry about my health, but worry about logistics." "But Mom, what about the kids? David's leaving for Denver tomorrow, and I have that big presentation Thursday that I can't miss." My heart sank. There it was. Not, "How are you feeling?" or, "What did the doctor say?" or, "We'll take care of everything." Just the immediate jump to how my hospitalization would inconvenience their schedule. "I can get a hotel near the airport tonight," David said, already pulling out his phone. "My flight's at 6 a.m. "And I have back-to-back meetings all week," Jennifer added, scrolling through her calendar. "Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez could help? Or we could call that babysitter Amy likes." I lay there listening to them problem solve around me, as if I wasn't even in the room. As if I were just another scheduling conflict to be managed. "What's wrong with Grandma?" Lily asked from the doorway, her voice small and scared. "She's just tired, sweetie," Jennifer said absently, still focused on her phone. "Everything will be fine. Grandma just needs to rest." Dr. Chen cleared her throat. "Actually, Mrs. Thompson's condition may be more serious than simple exhaustion. I'd like to speak with the family about the test results once we have them." Of course, Jennifer said. But I could see her mind racing ahead to carpools and conference calls and grocery shopping and meal planning. All the things I usually handled without her ever having to think about them. That night, alone, in the hospital bed, something crystallized in my mind. The silence was deafening. No teenage chatter, no TV playing in the background, no washer and dryer humming, no one calling my name every 5 minutes. Just me and the steady beep of monitoring machines. When was the last time I'd spent a night alone? When was the last time I'd gone to bed without checking on 3 kids, without setting 5 different alarms, without laying out someone's clothes for tomorrow? The next morning, Dr. Chen returned with test results. My blood pressure was dangerously high, and I was severely anemic. The dizziness and headaches were symptoms of stress and overexertion, but she also found an irregular heartbeat that needed immediate attention. "Mrs. Thompson, you've been running on empty for a very long time," she said gently. "Your body is essentially shutting down non-essential functions to keep you going. This is serious." "How serious?" "You need complete rest. For at least 2 weeks. No driving, no childcare, no household duties, and we need to start you on medication immediately." 2 weeks. The words echoed in my mind. 2 weeks without making breakfast, without homework help, without soccer practice carpools. Jennifer arrived just before noon, apologizing profusely for being late. Another meeting had run over. The kids were at school, and she'd arranged for them to go to her house directly afterward. "So what did the doctor say?" she asked, settling into the visitor's chair. I explained the diagnosis, watching her face carefully. The medication regimen, the required rest, the follow-up appointments. 2 weeks? Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. "Mom, that's a really long time. David will still be traveling. And I've got that client in from New York next week, and Amy's looking at colleges, and Ben has finals." "Jennifer," I interrupted, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. "I almost died in the grocery store yesterday." She blinked. "Well, you didn't die, Mom. You just collapsed. People collapse all the time." "Do they?" I asked. "Do you know anyone else who works 70 hours a week for free, managing 3 households essentially single-handedly while their health deteriorates?" "That's not... we don't expect you to, don't you?" The question hung between us. In the sterile hospital room, with machines beeping and nurses shuffling past, the truth felt impossible to ignore. But Jennifer did ignore it. "Mom, you're being dramatic. We appreciate everything you do, but it's not like we force you to babysit. You've always been happy to help." "Happy to help," I repeated slowly. 8 years, Jennifer. 8 years of helping. 8 years of every soccer game, every sick day, every school project, every doctor's appointment. And we're grateful. Are you? Because yesterday when I collapsed, your first concern wasn't my health. It was who would pick up the kids from school. I watched red creep up her neck. "That's not fair. Of course I was worried about you. But not worried enough to take time off work to care for me. I can't just take time off. You know that. I have responsibilities. And I don't?" The silence was deafening. For 8 years, my responsibilities had been invisible to her. The doctor's appointments I'd rescheduled, the volunteering opportunities I'd turned down, the friendships I'd let slide, the hobbies I'd abandoned. None of it had counted as responsibilities in her mind. "Look," Jennifer said finally, "I'll figure something out. Maybe the kids can stay at their friends' houses some nights. I'll work from home when I can. We'll manage." "You'll manage," I repeated. "And what about me? Who manages making sure I take my medications? Who drives me to my follow-up appointments? Who makes sure I'm actually resting instead of worrying about whether Ben remembered his inhaler, or if Lily has clean clothes for her dance class?" "I'll help, Mom. I said I'll figure it out." But even as she said it, I could see her mentally. sorting through her calendar, trying to fit my care into the tiny gaps between her existing obligations. I would still be at the bottom of her priority list, just as I had been for 8 years. That afternoon, after Jennifer left promising to sort everything out, I made a decision. Dr. Chen had mentioned a cardiac rehabilitation program that included respite care for patients who needed complete rest. It was located on the Oregon coast, about 2 hours from Riverside. Patients stayed in small cabins near the ocean with full medical supervision, but the peaceful environment necessary for recovery. When Jennifer called that evening, I told her about the program. The coast? She sounded confused. But why? We can take care of you at home. Can you? I asked. Jennifer, I need complete rest. No interruptions, no emergencies, no quick favors. When was the last time I had even one day without someone needing something from me? But the kids? The kids will survive 2 weeks without me. You managed before I became their primary caregiver. You can manage again. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Mom, this feels like you're punishing us. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm trying to prevent my heart from giving out entirely, which is what will happen if I don't get real rest. Rest that I clearly can't get while I'm available to solve everyone else's problems. When would you go? Tomorrow. Dr. Chen is making the arrangements. Another long pause. What do I tell the kids? Tell them the truth. Tell them Grandma is sick and needs to focus on getting better. Tell them you'll be taking care of them for a while. They're going to be devastated. Are they? Or are they going to be inconvenienced? The words came out harder than I intended, but I didn't take them back. The next morning, as I was being transferred to the medical transport that would take me to the coast, Amy called my hospital room. Grandma, Mom says you're going away for 2 weeks? Yes, sweetheart, I'm going. Somewhere I can rest and get better. But who will help me with my college essays? Not, I hope you feel better, or I'm worried about you. Just, who will help me? Your mother went to college too, I said gently. She can help you. But she's always at work, and she doesn't know how you've been helping me organize everything. That was the moment. The exact moment when 8 years of accumulated exhaustion crystallized into clarity. I wasn't just tired. I was done. Done being the default solution to every problem. Done being taken for granted. Done putting everyone else's needs before my own health. Amy, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. I love you dearly, but I can't help you right now. I need to focus on getting well. Your mother and you will figure it out together. But I'll call you when I'm settled at the coast. Give Ben and Lily my love. I hung up before she could protest further. The transport team was waiting, and for the first time in 8 years, I was putting my own needs first. The drive to the coast was liberating in ways I hadn't expected. Each mile took me further from the constant demands, further from the expectations, further from the role I'd been playing for so long. My phone buzzed constantly with texts, from Jennifer about logistical problems, from Amy about a college interview, from Ben about a missing homework assignment, and I let them buzz. I turned off my phone and watched the landscape change from suburban streets to farmland, to forest, to ocean. The Coastal Rehabilitation Center was exactly what I needed. A small cabin overlooking the Pacific, medical staff available round the clock, but no televisions, no internet, minimal cell service. Just me, my healing body, and the endless rhythm of waves. That night, as I lay in a real bed listening to the ocean instead of teenage dramas and household demands, I cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. Relief that I had finally chosen myself. Relief that my body was getting the rest it needed. And beneath it all, a tiny seed of something else. Anger. I was angry. Angry that it had taken a medical crisis for me to realize how badly I'd been neglecting myself. Angry that my family had simply accepted my constant availability without question. Angry that they'd responded to my hospitalization by immediately figuring out how to maintain their own comfort rather than focusing on my recovery. But I was also grateful. Grateful for the wake-up call before it was too late. Grateful for this enforced time away to reassess everything. Grateful for the opportunity to remember who I was before I became everyone's solution to every problem. The next few days established a routine I hadn't experienced in years. I woke naturally, without alarms. I ate meals prepared by someone else, at tables where I wasn't constantly getting up to grab forgotten items or settle arguments. I walked on the beach, slowly at first, then with increasing strength. I read books, actual books, not kids' homework, or permission slips or schedules. On the fourth day, Jennifer called the center's main line. I hadn't given her my cabin number, and my phone was still off. "Mom, we need to talk. The kids are struggling." "Are they okay?" I asked immediately, concerned. "Well, they're managing, but Ben missed his science project deadline because I forgot to remind him. And Lily forgot her dance shoes at home when I dropped her off for class. And Amy's having a meltdown because she can't find the binder where you kept all her college application materials." Each statement hit me like a small blow. The science project had been on my kitchen calendar for 3 weeks. Lily's dance shoes always needed to be packed the night before. The college binder was on my desk in the small office, exactly where it had been for 6 months. "Jennifer," I said slowly, "all of those things were clearly labeled and organized. In my house. You know where I keep everything. But I'm not you, Mom. I don't have your system. I'm trying to work and manage their schedules and figure out meals and homework and—" "Welcome to the last 8 years of my life," I interrupted. Silence. "That's not the same thing, Mom." "Isn't it? Jennifer, this is what I've been doing. While you worked. All day, every day for 8 years. And the kids never forgot things when I was in charge. Do you know why? Because you're retired? Because I paid attention. Because I lived and breathed their schedules. Because I made their needs my priority. And now you're getting a tiny taste of what that requires, and you're already overwhelmed." "I'm not overwhelmed. It's just a lot. And they're used to having you handle everything." "Exactly. Used to it. They've gotten used to me handling everything because I've been handling everything. But what happens when I truly can't? What if my heart had given out entirely? What would you all have done then?" "Don't be so dramatic, Mom." That word again. Dramatic. As if caring about my health, asserting my needs, setting boundaries was somehow theatrical rather than necessary. I'm being realistic, not dramatic. This is my reality check, Jennifer. And yours. You've all taken me for granted because I've allowed it. But that ends now. "What do you mean, ends now?" "I mean when I come home, things will be different. Very different." I could hear her sigh through the phone. "Mom, please don't do anything drastic. We need you. You need me to continue being your free childcare household manager and emotional support system. But I need to be healthy. And I need to reclaim my life." "Your life? This is your life. Your family is your life." "My family is part of my life, Jennifer. Not the entirety of it. For 8 years, I've let it become everything, and look where that got me. In a hospital bed with failing health and a family who immediately worried about their own convenience rather than my well-being. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. But it doesn't have to be completely one-sided either." We ended the call without resolution. That evening, I sat on the small deck of my cabin, watching the sun set over the Pacific, and made a list. Not a grocery list or a carpool schedule or a list of school supplies needed. A list of what I wanted my life to look like when I returned home. The list was simple but revolutionary. My needs come first, not last. I will not be the default childcare solution. I will maintain my own interests and friendships. I will set clear boundaries and stick to them. I will require reciprocal relationships with my family. As I wrote, I realized something profound. I hadn't just been helping raise my grandchildren. I'd been enabling my daughter to avoid the full responsibility of her choices. I'd been teaching my grandchildren that there would always be someone to solve their problems, meet their needs, sacrifice for their comfort, and in doing so, I'd taught them that my needs were less important than theirs. That night, I called Amy's cell phone. This time, I was ready. "Grandma, are you coming home soon? I really need help with my college applications." "Amy, I want to talk to you about something important. Do you have a few minutes?" "Sure, I guess. Mom's making dinner, but it's another disaster. She burned the chicken." I smiled sadly. Jennifer had actually been a decent cook before the kids started living with me full-time. She'd just gotten out of practice. "Amy, I need you to understand something. When I come home, things are going to be different." "Different how?" "I won't be able to be your go-to person anymore. Not the way I have been. My health requires that I take care of myself now." "But you're getting better, right? The doctors are fixing you?" "They're treating me, yes. But Amy, this isn't just about getting past this crisis. This is about changing the patterns that led to this crisis." "I don't understand." How could she? She'd never known anything different. From the time she was 6 months old, I'd been her primary caregiver. Her mother worked, her father traveled, and I was just there. Always there. "I've been taking care of you, Ben, and Lily for 8 years. I've been like a second mother to you all. But I'm your grandmother, not your mother. And I need to step back into that role." "So you don't want to help us anymore?" The hurt in her voice almost broke my resolve. "Almost. I want to have a grandmother relationship with you, not a parental one. I want to see you for family dinners, help with occasional homework, go to your games and recitals, but I can't keep managing your daily life." "But what if we need help?" "Then you ask your parents, or you figure it out yourself. You're almost 18, Amy. You're going to college next year. How will you manage there if you can't manage simple things like remembering your homework or keeping track of your schedule?" Long pause. "I guess I never thought about it that way." "That's because you've never had to. I've been your safety net for everything. But safety nets aren't meant to be permanent crutches." We talked for almost an hour. I told her about my collapsed garden, my canceled book club membership, my abandoned painting hobby. She listened, really listened, and for the first time, I think she began to understand the scope of what I'd been doing. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I never realized." "You couldn't realize, honey. You were a child when this arrangement started. But you're not a child anymore, and I can't keep treating you like one." "What do we do now?" "Now we learn to have a different kind of relationship. One where I can be your grandmother without losing myself in the process." After we hung up, I felt exhausted but clearer than I had in years. The ocean continued its endless rhythm outside my window, and for the first time in so long, I felt aligned with that rhythm rather than fighting against it. The next week passed in a blur of medical appointments, gentle exercise, and deep rest. My blood pressure began to normalize. The headaches faded. My energy returned gradually but steadily, and with each passing day, my resolve strengthened. On day 10, David called. It caught me by surprise. He rarely called me directly. "Maggie, I wanted to check in. Jennifer says you're doing better?" "I am. Thank you for asking." "Listen, I know this has been an adjustment. Me being gone so much, Jennifer working so hard. We've relied on you more than we probably should have." More than probably, I thought, but said nothing. "I'm trying to figure out how to make things easier for everyone. When I get back from this trip, I'm going to talk to my boss about reducing travel. Maybe we can hire someone to help with the kids." "That would be good," I said carefully. "And Maggie, I want you to know that we do appreciate everything. Really. I think we just got comfortable with the arrangement. Too comfortable." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I'd gotten from anyone. Not an apology exactly, but a recognition that the status quo had been unsustainable. I appreciate that, David, and I love helping when I can. But it needs to be when I can, not because I'm the only option. I understand. We'll figure it out. And maybe they would, or maybe they wouldn't. But either way, it was no longer my responsibility to figure it out for them. On my last day, at the Coastal Center, Dr. Chen came for a final checkup. My numbers were all improved, though still requiring medication and lifestyle changes. She sat with me on the deck, looking out at the ocean. "How are you feeling, really?" she asked. "Physically, much better. Emotionally, stronger, clearer." "And what will you do when you go home?" I smiled. "I'm going to be a grandmother, a real grandmother, not a substitute parent, not a full-time caregiver, not a doormat, just a grandmother who loves her family but loves herself too." That sounds like a healthy plan. It's the only sustainable plan. I nearly died because I forgot that my life matters too. Your life does matter, Margaret. Never forget that again. As the transport van wound its way back toward Riverside, I thought about what awaited me. The conversations I still needed to have, the boundaries I needed to enforce, the relationships I needed to rebuild or redefine. It wouldn't be easy. Change never is, especially when you're changing patterns that have been in place for 8 years. But I was ready. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly ready to put my own oxygen mask on first. The moment I walked through my front door, I knew everything had changed. Not the house itself. The worn hardwood floors still creaked in the same places. My grandmother's china cabinet still stood in the corner, and the family photos still lined the hallway. But something fundamental had shifted, and it started with me. The house felt different because I felt different. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't immediately scanning for what needed to be done. No automatic inventory of dishes in the sink, laundry to be folded, homework to be checked. I simply stood there, breathing, owning my space. Jennifer had cleaned, I noticed, or attempted to. The kitchen counters were wiped down, but my usually organized spice rack was jumbled. The living room was vacuumed, but throw pillows were haphazardly tossed on the couch. It was the kind of surface-level cleaning I'd been doing my whole life for other people. Enough to appear functional, but lacking the care that comes from truly living in and understanding a space. My suitcase sat by the door where the transport driver had left it. Normally, I would have unpacked immediately, started laundry, begun the process of re-establishing order. Instead, I left it there and walked through each room slowly, reclaiming my home inch by inch. In the kitchen, I found Jennifer's handwritten note taped to the refrigerator. "Mom, back at work, but will call tonight. Kids at their various activities. Until 5. Don't worry about dinner, we'll figure something out. Rest." The note irritated me more than it should have. "Don't worry about dinner" wasn't consideration for my recovery. It was the first sign that they were already expecting me to resume my old roles. After all, if someone tells you not to worry about something, they're implying you normally would, and probably should. I made myself tea, real tea, steeped properly, in my favorite mug that had been gathering dust in the back of the cabinet, since the kids preferred their colorful plastic tumblers. I carried it to my enclosed porch, the one space I'd tried to keep as mine over the years, though even it had gradually accumulated soccer cleats, backpacks, and art supplies. Sitting there, looking out at my neglected garden, I pulled out my phone. 13 missed calls, 27 text messages. I scrolled through them. Jennifer checking in about various logistics, Amy needing help with a college essay deadline, Ben asking where I kept his science textbook, David confirming his flight details, and even Mrs. Rodriguez asking if everything was okay since she'd seen me return. I turned off my phone without responding. Not to be vindictive, but because I needed time to establish what my boundaries would actually look like in practice, not just in theory. Around 5:30, I heard familiar voices and car doors slamming. Heavy footsteps on the porch, keys rattling. The front door bursting open. "Grandma?" Amy's voice carried from the entryway. "Mom said you were back." They found me on the porch. Amy in her college prep casual, Ben still in his science club t-shirt, and Lily clutching her dance bag. "There she is." Lily threw herself at me for a hug, and for a moment I just held her, inhaling the scent of her shampoo, feeling her familiar weight against me. These were my grandchildren. I loved them fiercely, but love and boundaries could coexist. "How are you feeling, really?" she asked. "Physically much better, emotionally, stronger, clearer. And what will you do when you go home?" I smiled. "I'm going to be a grandmother, a real grandmother. Not a substitute parent, not a full-time caregiver, not a doormat. Just a grandmother who loves her family but loves herself too." That sounds like a healthy plan. It's the only sustainable plan. I nearly died because I forgot that my life matters too. Your life does matter, Margaret. Never forget that again. As the transport van wound its way back toward Riverside, I thought about what awaited me. The conversations I still needed to have, the boundaries I needed to enforce, the relationships I needed to rebuild or redefine. It wouldn't be easy. Change never is, especially when you're changing patterns that have been in place for 8 years. But I was ready. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly ready to put my own oxygen mask on first. The moment I walked through my front door, I knew everything had changed. Not the house itself. The worn hardwood floors still creaked in the same places. My grandmother's china cabinets still stood in the corner, and the family photos still lined the hallway. But something fundamental had shifted, and it started with me. The house felt different because I felt different. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't immediately scanning for what needed to be done. No automatic inventory of dishes in the sink, laundry to be folded, homework to be checked. I simply stood there, breathing, owning my space. Jennifer had cleaned, I noticed, or attempted to. The kitchen counters were wiped down, but my usually organized spice rack was jumbled. The living room was vacuumed, but throw pillows were haphazardly tossed on the couch. It was the kind of surface-level cleaning I'd been doing my whole life for other people, enough to appear functional, but lacking the care that comes from truly living in and understanding a space. My suitcase sat by the door where the transport driver had left it. Normally, I would have unpacked immediately, started laundry, begun the process of re-establishing order. Instead, I left it there and walked through each room slowly, reclaiming my home inch by inch. In the kitchen, I found Jennifer's handwritten note taped to the refrigerator. "Mom, back at work, but will call tonight. Kids at their various activities. Until 5. Don't worry about dinner, we'll figure something out. Rest." The note irritated me more than it should have. "Don't worry about dinner" wasn't consideration for my recovery. It was the first sign that they were already expecting me to resume my old roles. After all, if someone tells you not to worry about something, they're implying you normally would, and probably should. I made myself tea, real tea, steeped properly, in my favorite mug that had been gathering dust in the back of the cabinet since the kids preferred their colorful plastic tumblers. I carried it to my enclosed porch, the one space I'd tried to keep as mine over the years, though even it had gradually accumulated soccer cleats, backpacks, and art supplies. Sitting there, looking out at my neglected garden, I pulled out my phone. 13 missed calls, 27 text messages. I scrolled through them, Jennifer checking in about various logistics, Amy needing help with a college essay deadline, Ben asking where I kept his science textbook, David confirming his flight details, and even Mrs. Rodriguez asking if everything was okay since she'd seen me return. I turned off my phone without responding. Not to be vindictive, but because I needed time to establish what my boundaries would actually look like in practice, not just in theory. Around 5:30, I heard familiar voices and car doors slamming. Heavy footsteps on the porch, keys rattling, the front door bursting open. "Grandma?" Amy's voice carried from the entryway. "Mom said you were back." They found me on the porch, Amy in her college prep casual, Ben still in his science club t-shirt, and Lily clutching her dance bag. "There she is!" Lily threw herself at me for a hug, and for a moment, I just held her, inhaling the scent of her shampoo, feeling her familiar weight against me. These were my grandchildren. I loved them fiercely. But love and boundaries could coexist. "How are you feeling, Grandma?" Amy asked, settling into the wicker chair beside me. "Mom said you were really sick." "I'm better," I said carefully. "How have you all been managing?" "It's been chaos," Ben admitted, flopping onto the small love seat. "Mom burned dinner like 5 times, and she doesn't understand my science homework at all. And she drives too fast," Lily added. "And she gets frustrated when we ask questions about stuff." I watched their faces as they cataloged their mother's shortcomings, waiting for the inevitable. "It's so much easier when you handle everything. Grandma." But something had changed in me during those 2 weeks. Their complaints didn't trigger my usual urge to fix, to smooth over, to take charge. "It sounds like it's been an adjustment for everyone," I said neutrally. "Mom said things would be different when you came back," Amy said carefully. What did she mean? Here it was, the conversation I'd been preparing for. "I need to tell you all something important." I took a sip of tea, gathering my thoughts. When I collapsed, it was because I'd been ignoring my own health for too long. The doctors were very clear. If I don't make significant changes, it could happen again. And next time might be worse. "But you're okay now, right?" Lily's voice was small, worried. "I'm getting better. But staying better means I can't go back to doing everything I was doing before." The 3 of them exchanged glances. "What does that mean?" Ben asked. "It means I'll be your grandmother, not your third parent. I'll come to important events when I can. I'll help with homework when you ask politely and I'm available. I'll enjoy spending time with you. But I won't be managing your daily schedules, packing your lunches, or solving every small problem that comes up." The silence that followed was heavy. Amy fidgeted with her phone. Ben stared at his shoes. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "But who's going to help us?" she whispered. "Your parents," I said gently but firmly. "And yourselves. You're all old enough to take more responsibility." "But what about my college applications?" Amy burst out. "You've been helping me organize everything. The deadlines, the essays, the interviews." "I helped when you asked. But Amy, you're 18. In 6 months, you'll be living on your own. How will you manage then?" "That's different. I'll figure it out when I get there." "Why not start figuring it out now?" She stared at me as if I'd suggested she learn to fly. The realization hit me then. I hadn't been helping them. I'd been enabling them. Every problem I solved was a lesson they didn't learn, a skill they didn't develop, a confidence they didn't build. "What about Ben's science stuff?" Amy demanded, deflecting from her own situation. "And Lily's dance? And Ben can ask his science teacher for extra help. Lily can set reminders on her phone for dance equipment. You all have resources beyond me." "But we don't want other people," Lily said, tears spilling over. "We want you." My heart broke a little, but I held firm. "And I want to be here for you. But as your grandmother, not as your built-in staff. There's a difference." Ben stood up, abruptly. "This is stupid. You're acting like we've been using you or something." "Haven't you been?" The blunt question hung in the air. Ben's face flushed. "That's not... We never asked you to do everything." "You didn't have to ask. I offered. But I offered too much and for too long. It wasn't healthy for any of us." "So, now you're just abandoning us?" Amy's voice turned sharp. "Because that's what this sounds like." "I'm not abandoning you. I'm teaching you to be more self-sufficient. There's a difference. By cutting us off? By setting boundaries, which are necessary in all healthy relationships. The front door opened then, and Jennifer's voice called out, "Hello? Everyone here?" She appeared in the doorway to the porch, still in her work clothes, looking harried. "Mom, you're back. How are you feeling? Kids, did you fill her in on everything?" "More or less," I said. Jennifer caught something in my tone. "Is everything all right?" "We need to talk," I said. "Privately." Jennifer's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. "Kids, why don't you start your homework? Mom and I will catch up." Once we were alone in the kitchen, Jennifer immediately started opening cabinets. "Let me make you some dinner. You must be exhausted. What do you feel like? I can order something." Jennifer, I interrupted. "Please sit down." She froze mid-motion, then reluctantly joined me at the kitchen table. "I need to set some expectations for how things will work now that I'm back," I began. "Of course. Whatever you need to recover. I completely understand." "I don't think you do." I took a breath. "I won't be watching the kids during the day anymore." "Oh, well, they're in school during the day anyway, so that's fine." "Jennifer, I mean it all. Not before school, not after school, not on weekends. Unless it's planned well in advance and you ask me first." Her mouth opened, then closed. "But where will they go?" "That's for you to figure out. You're their mother." "But I work, and David travels, and the kids have needs that you've been outsourcing to me for 8 years." "I haven't been outsourcing. You offered to help. And I did help. More than helped. I took over. But that's done now." Her face hardened. "So you're just going to let us struggle?" "I'm going to let you handle your family the way most parents do, by actually parenting." "That's not fair, Mom. You know how demanding David's job is, how important my work is. And what about how important my health is? What about how important my life is?" She blinked. "Of course your health is important. That's why we're all being so careful not to stress you. Not stressing me means not expecting me to resume my role as unpaid domestic help. You make it sound like we're exploiting you. Haven't you been?" She stood up, anger flashing across her face. "That's completely unfair. We never asked you to do as much as you did. You didn't have to ask. I did it because I love you all. But I confused loving you with sacrificing myself for you. And that ends now." "So what? You're just going to sit here while we figure out childcare and rides and meals and homework? On our own?" "Yes." The single word seemed to stun her. We sat in silence for a moment, the evening light casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. "I don't understand you anymore," Jennifer said finally. "The woman who raised me would never turn her back on family. The woman who raised you almost died because she could never say no to family. Which woman do you think you need?" She didn't answer. Instead, she gathered her things, called the kids, and left without saying goodbye. I heard car doors slamming, the engine starting, the sound fading as they drove away. Alone again, I sat at the kitchen table as darkness fell. This was harder than I'd expected. Not the solitude, I'd been craving that, but the way they'd made me feel like the villain for prioritizing my own well-being. My phone buzzed, a text from Jennifer. "The kids are upset. Amy is crying about her college stuff. Ben says he doesn't understand why you hate us now. Lily thinks she did something wrong. I hope you're happy." I turned off my phone again and made myself a simple dinner, soup and toast, eaten in the quiet of my own kitchen. No constant interruptions, no mediating sibling disputes, no fielding questions I'd answered 100 times before. Later, lying in my own bed, I replayed the conversations of the day. Had I been too harsh? Too sudden? Should I have eased into the transition? But then I remembered Dr. Chen's words. Your body is essentially shutting down non-essential functions to keep you going. And I remembered the beeping machines, the IVs, the very real possibility that I might have died in that grocery store. No, I hadn't been too harsh. If anything, I'd been too soft for too many years. The next day established what would become my new routine. I woke naturally, made coffee, tended to my long-neglected garden. The tomatoes were beyond saving, but the herbs had survived. I spent the morning weeding, pruning, rediscovering the satisfaction of working with my hands for my own pleasure, not someone else's needs. Around noon, my doorbell rang. Mrs. Rodriguez stood on my porch, holding a casserole dish. Maggie, I heard you were back. How are you feeling? Better, thank you. Please come in. We settled on the porch with iced tea, and she filled me in on neighborhood happenings I'd missed. It struck me that I hadn't had a leisurely conversation with a friend in months. Every interaction had been rushed, interrupted, or canceled, due to someone else's emergency. Can I ask you something, Helen? I said when she paused. Did you think I was doing too much with the kids? She looked startled, then thoughtful. I worried about you, yes, but you seem to manage everything so well. I figured it was what you wanted. I thought it was what I wanted too, or what I should want. And now? Now I realize there's a difference between helping and enabling, between supporting and sacrificing everything. She nodded slowly. My sister went through something similar with her daughter's family. It's hard to find the right balance. Did she figure it out? Eventually, but not without some hard conversations and hurt feelings. That afternoon, I received a surprise visitor. Amy appeared at my door just after 3, her face puffy from crying. Grandma, can we talk? Just us? I let her in, noting that she'd walked rather than having someone drop her off. Perhaps a small step toward independence? I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, she began without preamble. About the college stuff, about me needing to manage things myself. And you're right, I've been kind of pathetic, haven't I? Treating you like my personal assistant. I softened slightly. Not pathetic, just comfortable. Sometimes comfort becomes a cage without us realizing it. I'm scared, Grandma, she admitted. About college, about growing up, about figuring things out on my own. Being scared is normal. Using other people to avoid facing those fears isn't healthy. I know. She twisted her hands in her lap. Will you help me sometimes? Like, if I'm really stuck? Of course. As a grandmother, not a manager, there's a difference. Can you explain the difference? I thought about it. A grandmother offers wisdom when asked. A manager solves problems without teaching the skills to solve them yourself. Oh, she was quiet for a moment. I think I've been treating you like a manager. We all have. But that's changing now. Ben and Lily don't understand. Yet. They're really upset. They'll learn, just like you're learning. Mom's pretty mad. She'll adjust too. Change is hard for everyone. Amy stayed for another hour, talking about college in a different way than before. Instead of frantically listing everything she needed help with, she actually asked for advice about choosing between schools, about managing anxiety, about growing into adulthood. It was, I realized, the kind of grandmother-grandchild conversation I'd been missing all these years. That evening, David called. Maggie, I just got back from my trip. Jennifer filled me in on everything. I'm sorry about the adjustment. I know we've been taking advantage of your generosity. Thank you for recognizing that. Look, I've been thinking. We need to make some changes. Real changes. Not just temporary adjustments while you recover. What kind of changes? I've talked to my boss about remote work options. I can cut my travel by 60% if I coordinate better. and we're going to hire a babysitter for after school. Jennifer found someone through her work, another parent in a similar situation. That sounds reasonable. Also, I want to apologize. I've been so focused on my career, I haven't been pulling my weight at home. That's not fair to you or Jennifer or the kids. It was an apology I hadn't expected, and it meant more coming from David than from Jennifer. He'd always been on the periphery, the traveling father who swooped in and out of daily life. Hearing him acknowledge responsibility felt significant. I appreciate that, David, really. The kids are having a hard time with the transition, though, especially Lily. They'll adapt. Kids are resilient. Will you meet with all of us, like a family meeting, to talk through the new arrangement? I considered it. A family meeting could be productive, or it could become a group effort to guilt me back into my old role. I'll think about it. Fair enough. And Maggie? Thank you. For everything you've done all these years. I don't think we've ever properly said that. After we hung up, I felt a mix of relief and wariness. Acknowledgement was good. Actual change would be better. Over the next week, I established new patterns. I joined a senior water aerobics class at the community center. I scheduled coffee dates with friends I'd been too busy to see. I started volunteering at the local library, reading to small children, other people's grandchildren who came to story hour with their parents. The kids still came by, but the dynamics were shifting. Ben asked me to help with one difficult science concept rather than expecting me to review all his homework. Lily showed me her dance routine by video call instead of expecting me to drive an hour each way to watch practice. Amy updated me on college applications through text, asking for specific advice rather than dumping everything in my lap. Jennifer's adjustment was slower. She'd call with updates that always seemed to include subtle hints about how difficult things were, how the new babysitter wasn't as reliable as I'd been, how the kids missed having dinner at my house every night. "They're not eating properly," she complained during one call. "The babysitter just gives them snacks." "Then make sure they have proper meals when you get home," I suggested. But I get home at 6:30, and they're starving by then. And I'm exhausted. Welcome to parenthood. Mom, please. I'm barely keeping my head above water here. "You're learning to swim," I corrected. "I spent 8 years doing the swimming. For you. Now it's your turn." 2 weeks after returning home, I scheduled my first follow-up appointment with Dr. Chen. My blood pressure was stable, my stress levels visibly improved. She seemed pleased with my progress. "You look different," she observed. Calmer. "I feel different. It turns out peace is good for recovery." "And your family situation?" "Still adjusting, but I'm holding my boundaries." "Good. That's often the hardest part." "It is hard. Some days I want to just give in and make everything easier for everyone. But easier for them isn't healthier for me. Or for them, really." She nodded approvingly. "Exactly. How's your support system beyond your family?" "I'm rebuilding it, reconnecting with friends, finding new activities. I realized I'd isolated myself by making everyone else's life my whole life. That's a common pattern with caregivers. You forget you need care too." That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for myself. Not grocery. Shopping, not buying supplies for the kids, but actual shopping for me. New clothes, a book I'd been wanting to read, some gardening gloves. At the bookstore, I ran into Patricia, an old teaching colleague. "Maggie, I heard you'd been in the hospital. How are you?" We ended up having coffee, catching up on years of missed conversations. She invited me to join her book club, The One. I'd left years ago when I couldn't manage one more commitment. "I'd love to," I said, and meant it. Walking home with my purchases, I felt something I hadn't experienced in so long I'd almost forgotten what it was. Joy. Simple, uncomplicated. Joy at doing something just for me. That evening, all 3 kids showed up at once, which was unusual. "We've been talking," Amy announced, apparently elected as spokesperson. And we want to apologize. For what, specifically? For taking you for granted, Ben continued. For just expecting you to handle everything. For not noticing how much you were doing, Lily added, her voice small. I gestured for them to sit. And we want to do better, Amy said. We've been figuring some things out on our own. Ben found a study group for science. I've started using the college application platforms more effectively. Lily set up a carpool with another dance family. That's wonderful. We still want you involved, Ben said quickly. But as a grandmother. Not as whatever we turned you into. We didn't mean to turn you into anything, Lily said, tears starting again. We got used to you always being there. I got used to it too, I admitted. But sometimes what we're used to isn't what's best for us. Can we still come over sometimes? Amy asked. Not to dump everything on you, but just to hang out? I'd like that, very much. Maybe we could cook dinner together sometimes. Ben suggested. Actually cook, not just expect you to feed us? That sounds lovely. Over the following months, I watched my family learn to function differently. Not perfectly, not without resistance, but differently. Jennifer hired a part-time housekeeper, finally acknowledging that managing a household while working full-time required help. David did reduce his travel and started attending more school events. The kids developed routines and systems that, while less polished than mine had been, were theirs. I continued my own rebuilding. The water aerobics class led to a friendship with 3 other women who'd also been caregivers. We started meeting for weekly coffee, sharing experiences, and supporting each other through similar transitions. I took up painting again, something I'd loved before marriage and motherhood had consumed my creative energy. My garden thrived that year. Not just because I had time to tend it, but because tending it fed something in me that had been starving. The meditative rhythm of weeding, the satisfaction of watching seeds become plants, the simple joy of hands in soil. It was healing in ways the Coastal Medical Center hadn't touched. 6 months after my collapse, I received an unexpected letter. Not a bill or a family obligation or a school notice, but a personal letter from Amy, now away at college. Dear Grandma, it began. I wanted to thank you for the hardest lesson I've ever learned. At first, I was angry when you stepped back. I felt abandoned and couldn't understand why you were punishing us. But now, living on my own, managing my own schedule, solving my own problems, I get it. You weren't abandoning us. You were preparing us. I'm actually handling college pretty well, and I know it's because you forced me to become more independent. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I love you more now, not less. Can we have coffee together during winter break? Just us, like real grandmother-granddaughter time? Love, Amy. I cried reading that letter. Happy tears, relieved tears, validated tears. Change was always painful, but sometimes the pain led to wisdom. That evening, I called Jennifer. I got a letter from Amy today, I told her. Oh? She thanked me for the boundaries, for making her learn independence. A long pause. I owe you an apology, Mom. For what? For making you feel guilty about taking care of yourself, for seeing your boundaries as rejection instead of necessary self-preservation. Thank you for saying that. I've been doing a lot of thinking and talking to my therapist. You're seeing a therapist? Yeah. Turns out I had some issues with parentification, expecting you to parent my kids while I focused on other things. She helped me see the pattern. We talked for over an hour. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. We discussed how the arrangement had started, how it had evolved beyond anyone's intention, how we'd all played a part in creating an unsustainable situation. I want to be a better daughter to you, Jennifer said finally. and a better mother to my kids. You're both those things already, I replied. But there's always room to grow. Can we start fresh? Like really fresh? No old expectations, no guilt, just family? I'd like that. That night, I stood on my porch watching the sunset, feeling something profound had shifted. Not just in my circumstances, but in me. I'd spent so many years defining myself by how much I could do for others that I'd lost sight of who I was independent of those roles. Now, as the sky painted itself in soft pastels over my quiet neighborhood, I felt complete in a way I hadn't since Tom died. Maybe even before that. I was a grandmother, a mother, a neighbor, a friend. But most importantly, I was Maggie, a woman with her own interests, her own needs, her own life. The next Sunday, my whole family gathered for dinner. Not at my house, as had been tradition, but at Jennifer and David's. They'd planned it, cooked together, set the table themselves. The meal was simpler than I might have prepared. Some dishes slightly oversalted. The timing off so dessert was served before everyone finished their main course. And it was perfect. I watched Lily help clear plates without being asked. Ben, explaining a science concept to his father with genuine enthusiasm. Amy laughing as she helped her mother in the kitchen. These weren't the dependent children who'd relied on me for everything. They were young people learning to navigate the world, supported by parents who were learning to balance careers and family. Most importantly, they were all functioning without me as the central pivot. "Grandma," Lily said as we sat on their deck afterward, "I like our new arrangement." "You do?" "Yeah, it's nice having Mom and Dad figure things out. And I like that when we see you, it's because we want to, not because we have to be there." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." As I drove home that evening, past the familiar streets of Riverside, past neighbors walking dogs and teenagers playing basketball, I felt a deep sense of rightness. My phone buzzed with a text, probably Jennifer thanking me for coming, or Amy sharing a college update, or Ben with a quick science question. I let it sit unanswered until I got home. Whatever it was could wait. For the first time in 8 years, my time was my own, and I was finally okay with keeping it that way. Later, in my garden under the stars, I thought about the woman I'd been before that collapse in the grocery store. She'd been generous to a fault, nurturing to the point of self-extinction, always available to everyone except herself. I didn't miss her. The woman I was becoming, setting boundaries, pursuing her own interests, loving her family without losing herself. This woman was someone I was finally proud to be. As I watered my herbs under the porch light, inhaling the scent of basil and oregano, I realized that nearly dying had taught me how to finally, truly live. The morning I decided to plan my first real vacation in decades, the rain fell softly against the windows, creating a gentle rhythm that matched my newfound sense of peace. Sitting at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee and my laptop, I felt a thrill I hadn't experienced since before Tom died. For the first time in 8 years, I could plan something entirely for myself without consulting schedules, coordinating childcare, or ensuring someone else's needs were met first. I'd been home from the coastal center for 3 months, and while the family adjustments continued, I'd established something precious: autonomy. My days had shape and structure again, but they were formed by my choices, not by endless obligations to others. The online travel sites displayed endless possibilities. Ireland's green countryside beckoned, its stone cottages and misty mornings promising the kind of solitude I craved. Tuscany offered art history and slow-paced village life. Even a simple road trip along the Pacific Coast Highway appeared in my searches, the idea of driving with no timeline, stopping wherever caught my fancy. Helen Rodriguez knocked on my back door just after 9, interrupting my wanderlust. She came bearing her signature cinnamon rolls and neighborhood gossip, but more importantly, she brought something I'd forgotten I missed: Friendship without agenda. You look like a woman with a secret, she observed, settling into her usual chair at my kitchen table. Not a secret exactly, just dreaming. I turned my laptop toward her, showing the array of travel tabs open on my screen. About time! She clapped her hands together, genuinely delighted. Where are you thinking? Everywhere. Nowhere. I haven't decided yet. It's been so long since I've planned anything just for me. When I retired from nursing, I spent 2 months in New Zealand, Helen mused, selecting a cinnamon roll. Best decision I ever made. Changed my whole perspective on what retirement could look like. We spent the morning discussing travel options. But more than that, we talked about the strange liberation of reaching an age where you finally understand that your time is finite and precious. Helen shared stories of her post-retirement adventures, the friendships she'd made, the peace she'd found in pursuing her own interests. You know what I've noticed about you lately? She said as we cleared the breakfast dishes. You seem lighter. Like that heavy weight you carried for years has finally lifted. It has, though sometimes I still feel guilty about setting boundaries. Guilt is a luxury you can't afford at our age, Maggie. We raised our children. We supported our families. Now it's time for us. After Helen left, I returned to my travel planning with renewed enthusiasm. Something about having a friend validate my desires, someone outside the family dynamics, strengthened my resolve. I bookmarked several tours, made notes about accommodations, researched travel insurance for seniors. That afternoon, while perusing a travel forum, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ben holding what appeared to be a science fair poster. "Hey, Grandma," he said when I opened the door. "Sorry to bother you. I know you're trying to rest and everything." "I'm not trying to rest anymore, Ben. That was months ago. I'm trying to live." "What do you need?" "I have this science fair project due next week. I could really use your opinion on my presentation." I noted the careful phrasing, asking for my opinion, not expecting me to fix everything. Progress. "Of course. Come in." We spread his poster on the dining room table, and he walked me through his project on renewable energy. His work was thorough, well-researched, and honestly didn't need much feedback. As we talked, I realized this visit wasn't really about the science fair. "Grandma, are you mad at us? Like, permanently mad?" I set down my reading glasses, trying to read his expression. "What makes you think I'm mad? You just seem different, more distant, like you're pulling away from all of us." "I'm not pulling away, Ben. I'm establishing a healthier relationship with you all. There's a difference. Is it because we didn't help when you were sick?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. At 15, Ben was still young enough to be vulnerable, but old enough to grasp complex emotions. Partly, yes, but it's more complicated than that. For 8 years, I made your family's problems my problems. I thought that was love, but it wasn't healthy for any of us. I'm sorry we took advantage of you. You didn't know you were, and I didn't recognize the pattern either. But now I do, and I have to protect my own well-being. He nodded slowly, processing this. "So what does that mean for us? Like going forward?" "It means I'll be your grandmother, not your substitute parent. I'll love you, support you, but not manage your daily life for you." "Can I still come over sometimes? Just to hang out?" "I'd like that. Actually, I was just looking at travel plans. Want to see where I'm thinking of going?" His eyes lit up. Real enthusiasm, not the practiced interest he'd shown when I helped with homework, because he had to. We spent the next hour browsing travel sites together, him making suggestions, me sharing my criteria. It was the kind of easy companionship I'd yearned for, but never had time to cultivate when I was constantly solving problems. Before he left, Ben hesitated at the door. "Grandma, I'm glad you're taking care of yourself now. even if it means we have to figure more stuff out on our own. After he left, I sat for a moment processing the conversation. This was what healthy family relationships looked like, people caring for each other while maintaining their own identities and responsibilities. That evening, I made a decision. I booked a 3-week trip to Ireland, departing in 6 weeks. As I entered my credit card information, my hands trembled slightly, not from doubt, but from excitement. When was the last time I'd felt this kind of anticipation? The next morning, I called Jennifer to inform her of my travel plans. Ireland? For 3 weeks? She sounded stunned. Yes, early April through late April. I'll email you my itinerary once it's finalized. But that's when Amy's bringing her boyfriend home to meet us. And Ben has his science fair finals, and you'll handle those events as a family, like families do. Silence on the other end. Then, to my surprise, Jennifer laughed. You're really doing this, aren't you? The whole living your own life thing. I really am. Good for you, Mom. I mean it. It's about time. The conversation felt like a milestone. No guilt trip, no negotiations, just acceptance. Maybe my family was learning too. Over the following weeks, I threw myself into trip preparation with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I joined an online forum for mature solo travelers, researched everything from sheep wool workshops to ancient stone circles, even took a basic Gaelic language class at the community center. Lisa, one of the women from my water aerobics class, became an unexpected ally in this new chapter. She'd traveled extensively after her divorce and understood the transformative power of independent adventure. The first solo trip is the scariest and the most liberating, she told me over coffee one afternoon. You'll discover things about yourself you forgot were there. I'm nervous about being alone for that long. What if something goes wrong? Something probably will go wrong. That's part of the adventure. You'll handle it, and you'll be proud of yourself for handling it. As my departure date approached, I noticed changes in my family dynamics that went beyond mere adjustment. David took 2 weeks off to manage school events while Jennifer worked. Amy arranged her college visits during her own spring break, rather than expecting me to accompany her. Lily joined a study group at school instead of relying on me for homework help. They were becoming more self-sufficient, and I was becoming more myself. 3 days before my departure, the kids organized a small going-away dinner at their house. They'd planned everything themselves. Jennifer supervised the cooking, Amy handled decorations, Ben researched Irish traditions to incorporate into the evening, and Lily made a playlist of Celtic music. We wanted to send you off properly, Amy explained as I admired their efforts. Like family really should. During dinner, they presented me with a gift, a beautiful leather journal embossed with Celtic knots. For your adventures, Lily said shyly, so you can write down everything and tell us about it when you come back. If you want to tell us, I mean, Ben corrected. No pressure. I hugged each of them, deeply moved. This was what I'd been hoping. For family support without obligation, love without possession. I'll definitely share stories with you, and I'll video call when I can, but this trip is mine. We know, Grandma, Amy said softly, and we're proud of you for taking it. That night, lying in bed for one of my last nights in my own home before the adventure began, I reflected on how far we'd all come. The rigid boundaries I'd initially established had softened into something more sustainable, clear expectations with room for genuine connection. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Have the most amazing trip, Mom. Don't worry about us. We've got everything covered. Remember to actually rest and enjoy yourself. We love you. I smiled, saving the message. This was the daughter I'd hoped to raise, capable, independent, and truly caring. It had just taken some hard lessons to get there. The morning of my departure dawned clear and cool. I'd packed the night before, double-checking my organized suitcase with a travel checklist I'd printed from the internet. Everything essential was included: but I deliberately left spaces for souvenirs, experiences, and whatever unexpected treasures Ireland might offer. David arrived early to drive me to the airport, something he'd insisted on rather than letting me arrange a ride-share. "Nervous?" he asked as we loaded my luggage. "Excited nervous, not scared nervous." "Good. You deserve this adventure." He paused, seemingly choosing his words carefully. "Maggie, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you acknowledgement. You kept our family running for years, and I was too caught up in my own work to see it." "Thank you for saying that. But David, you're seeing it now. That's what matters. When you get back, I'd like to talk about setting up a different arrangement. Not just crisis management, but intentional family support that doesn't sacrifice anyone's well-being." I looked at my son-in-law with new appreciation. This wasn't the distant, work-focused man who'd taken my childcare for granted. This was someone who'd learned to see beyond immediate convenience to long-term family health. I'd like that conversation. At the airport, David walked me to the security checkpoint. "Send pictures if you want to, or don't. Just have an amazing time. The kids and Jennifer will be fine, better than fine. They'll grow." "I believe they will." As I handed my boarding pass to the TSA agent, I felt a flutter of excitement mixed with the smallest touch of anxiety. Not about my family. They truly would be fine. But about myself. Could I navigate foreign countries alone? Would I enjoy my own company for 3 weeks? Was I too old for this kind of adventure? The answers, I realized as I settled into my airplane seat, didn't matter as much as the asking. At 62, I was finally brave enough to face those questions, to discover who Maggie Thompson was when she wasn't caring for everyone else. The flight passed in a blur of anticipation and planning. I reviewed my loose itinerary, Dublin for 3 days to adjust, then a guided tour through the countryside, followed by a week of complete independence in a cottage on the West Coast. The balance between structure and spontaneity felt perfect for a first major solo trip. During a layover in Boston, I called Helen to let her know I was on schedule. "How are you feeling?" she asked, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Like I'm 16 again, heading off to college for the first time. Scared and thrilled in equal measure." "That's exactly how you should feel. Have the most wonderful time, and don't you dare spend all your energy worrying about things back home." "I won't. For the first time in my adult life, I won't." As my connecting flight began boarding, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. From a woman who collapsed in a grocery store, overwhelmed and unappreciated, to someone confidently embarking on a solo international adventure. The transformation hadn't been easy, for me or my family, but it had been necessary. Ireland seemed like the perfect destination for this new chapter. A country known for its storytelling tradition, its respect for independence, its celebration of individual journeys within community frameworks. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was leaving family to discover what healthy family relationships could look like. My window seat offered views of the Atlantic as we flew east, the ocean stretching endlessly toward my destination. Somewhere, below, fishing boats and cargo ships traced their own paths across the water, each with their own destinations, their own purposes. Like them, I was charting a new course. Not away from family, but toward a more balanced way of loving them. Not abandoning relationships, but establishing healthier patterns within them. The elderly man seated next to me struck up a conversation as we settled in for the transatlantic portion of the flight. "Traveling alone?" he asked, noting my single boarding pass. "Yes, first major solo trip." "Brave of you." There's something powerful about traveling alone, especially at our age. You meet yourself in ways you can't when surrounded by familiar people. That's what I'm hoping for. "Where in Ireland are you headed?" I explained my loose itinerary, mentioning my plans to stay in a cottage on the West Coast. "Ah, the West Coast is magical. All that wildness and beauty. You'll find plenty of space to think there. Space to think is exactly what I need. We talked off and on throughout the flight, sharing travel stories and life observations. He told me about his late wife, how they'd traveled extensively until her death, how he'd had to learn to appreciate solitude again. It's different now, traveling without her, but it's still meaningful, just differently meaningful. His words resonated. My life without Tom, then without the constant demands of grandchildren, was different, but could still be rich and purposeful. As we began our descent into Dublin, the Irish countryside spread below us in patches of green and brown, dotted with stone walls and small villages. The morning sun painted everything in soft, welcoming light. Immigration was straightforward. My luggage arrived intact, and soon I found myself standing outside Dublin Airport with a taxi waiting to take me to my hotel. The air smelled different, fresher, tinged with salt from the distant sea and something indefinably ancient. In the taxi, I pulled out my phone to text Jennifer that I'd arrived safely. Then I stopped, holding the device in my lap. For the next 3 weeks, I would communicate on my terms, when I wanted to, because I wanted to share experiences, not because anyone expected constant updates. Instead, I opened the leather journal the kids had given me and wrote my first entry. Dublin, 8:47 a.m. local time. The sky is overcast but promising, like this entire journey feels. I'm here. I'm alone, but not lonely. I'm free in a way I'd forgotten was possible. This is where the real adventure begins. The taxi driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. First time in Ireland? First time doing a lot of things, I replied, smiling as the city center of Dublin came into view. My hotel room was small, but charming, with a window overlooking a narrow street filled with colorful doors and flower boxes. After checking in, I sat on the edge of the bed, taking in the strangeness and rightness of being completely alone in a foreign place. No one needed me here. No one expected anything from me. For the next 3 weeks, I could simply be Maggie, curious traveler, eager explorer, woman reclaiming her own life story. I unpacked slowly, arranging my clothes in the tiny wardrobe, placing my toiletries in the bathroom, setting my journal on the bedside table. Each action felt deliberate, mindful. This space was mine alone. By afternoon, jet lag was creeping in, but excitement overruled fatigue. I ventured out into Dublin's streets, armed with a city map and no particular agenda. The freedom to wander aimlessly felt intoxicating. In a small cafe near Trinity College, I ordered my first Irish coffee and sat by the window, watching people pass by. Families with children, couples holding hands, business people checking phones, elderly folks chatting on benches. Life happening all around me while I sat peacefully observing, no longer responsible for managing anyone else's experience. My phone buzzed with a message from Amy. Hope you landed safely. Lily aced her math test and Ben made the science fair. Semifinals. We're all good here. Enjoy your adventure. I smiled, responding with a simple green heart emoji. They were good. They were managing. They were proud of me for taking this leap. As the afternoon sun slanted through the cafe window, I opened my journal again. Being alone in a foreign city at this age feels both vulnerable and powerful. I'm aware of my limitations. I can't walk as far as I once could. I need reading. Glasses now. But I'm also aware of my strengths. I've survived loss, raised children, helped raise grandchildren, and now I'm here, choosing my own path. The young woman who came to America with Tom 40 years ago would be proud. That evening, I joined a walking tour of Dublin, led by an enthusiastic guide named Sean. The group was diverse. Young backpackers, middle-aged couples, a few other solo travelers my age. Listening to stories of Irish history and culture while walking cobblestone streets, I felt connected to something larger than family drama and domestic concerns. During dinner at a traditional pub recommended by Sean, I sat at the bar and struck up a conversation with locals. They were curious about my solo journey, impressed by my independence, and eager to share recommendations for the rest of my trip. "Make sure you see the cliffs of Moher," one woman insisted, "and don't miss the Aran Islands. The West Coast is where the real magic is." "That's exactly where I'm headed next week." "Smart woman. You'll find yourself out there if you're looking." I wasn't sure I was looking to find myself. I thought I'd already done that through my health crisis and family reorganization. But as I sipped my Guinness and listened to traditional music floating through the pub, I realized there might be more layers to uncover. Back in my hotel room, I called Jennifer as promised. "Mom, how's Dublin? Are you having a wonderful time?" "I am. The people are lovely, the food is good, and I'm feeling proud of myself for navigating everything." "We're all so proud of you, too. The kids keep talking about your adventure. I think you've inspired them." "Inspired them how?" "To be more independent, I think. To realize that age is just a number when it comes to pursuing dreams." After we hung up, I lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a foreign city, distant traffic, voices in languages I couldn't quite place, the occasional burst of laughter from the street below. This was the first night of my new life. Not the coastal medical center life of recovery, not the post-crisis boundary-setting life, but the actively choosing adventure life. At 62, I was finally writing my own story rather than supporting everyone else's. Tomorrow would bring more Dublin exploration. Then the countryside tour, village pubs, ancient ruins, and eventually my solitary cottage on the wild Atlantic coast. 3 weeks stretched ahead like an open road, full of possibilities I couldn't yet imagine. As sleep began to claim me, my last conscious thought was simple but profound. I was exactly where I wanted to be, doing exactly what I wanted to do, answerable only to myself. The freedom was delicious. My cottage on Ireland's west coast sat, perched on a hillside overlooking Galway Bay, surrounded by fields that rolled toward the Atlantic in gentle waves of green. After 2 weeks of touring and exploring with other travelers, this week of complete solitude felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. The morning I arrived, a fine mist hung in the air, making everything soft and dreamlike. The cottage was exactly as advertised. 2 bedrooms, a fireplace, a tiny kitchen with everything I needed, and windows that framed the sea like living paintings. But what struck me most was the silence. No televisions, no traffic, no one calling. My name. Just wind and waves and the occasional cry of a seabird. I spent my first day there walking the coastal path, moving slowly, stopping often to sit on stone walls and simply observe. The landscape felt ancient and patient, as if it had been waiting centuries just to whisper its secrets to whoever was willing to listen long enough. That night, lighting my first fire in the cottage hearth, I understood what all those travel books meant about Ireland's magic. Sitting before the flames with a glass of Irish whiskey, listening to waves crash against distant cliffs, I felt a profound sense of belonging that had nothing to do with family or obligation, and everything to do with being present in my own skin. My phone buzzed occasionally with messages, but I'd established a routine. Check once daily, respond if necessary, then put it away. The separation felt clean, healthy. My family was managing, even thriving in my absence. Ben had won second place at the science fair. Lily had landed a lead role in the spring dance recital. Amy had been accepted by her preferred college with a partial scholarship. Each piece of news brought genuine joy, the kind of uncomplicated happiness I'd missed when I was too mired in daily logistics to appreciate these victories properly. Distance, I was discovering, created perspective. Love without proximity allowed. Celebration without burden. On my third morning at the cottage, I decided to attempt something I hadn't done since college: plein air painting. I'd packed a small watercolor set, more from nostalgia than serious intention, but the morning light on the water demanded documentation. Setting up my easel on a gentle slope facing the bay, I began with tentative strokes, trying to capture the way morning mist created layers of blue and gray and silver. My technique was rusty, my color mixing imperfect, but something magical happened as I worked. Time stopped. The constant mental chatter that had accompanied me for decades simply quieted. For 2 hours, nothing existed except color, light, and the gradual emergence of something recognizable on my paper. When I finally stepped back, the painting wasn't technically proficient, but it captured something essential: the spaciousness I was feeling, the peace I was discovering. That afternoon, while hanging my watercolor to dry, I heard a knock at the cottage door. My heart jumped. Who could it be? I'd told no one my exact location except the rental agency. Opening the door, I found a woman about my age holding a plate of brown bread and a bowl of what appeared to be vegetable soup. "Hello," she said with a distinctly Irish accent. "I'm Maeve. I live just down the road. Thought you might appreciate a proper welcome." I invited her in, grateful for human contact, but also curious about how she'd known I was there. "Oh, word travels fast in these parts," she explained, settling comfortably by my fire. "American woman, renting the O'Sullivan cottage, traveling. Alone. That's news enough to reach every kitchen table in the parish." We talked for hours. Maeve had been widowed 5 years earlier, much like me. She'd raised 3 children, seen them off into their own lives, and now filled her days with gardening, painting, and what she called tending to the spirits of the place. "You're the first solo traveler we've had in ages," she told me. "Most Americans come in groups or families. It takes courage to venture out alone at our age." "I didn't know I had courage until I needed it," I admitted. "That's usually how it works." She smiled knowingly. Life has a way of drawing out strengths we didn't know existed. Before leaving, Maeve invited me to join her for tea the following day, mentioning that several other women in the area would be gathering for their weekly wisdom circle. "It's nothing formal," she explained. "Just women of a certain age sharing stories, offering perspectives. You might enjoy it." Something about her offer felt significant, though I couldn't pinpoint why. I'd love to come. That evening, I video called home, setting up my laptop by the window so the family could see the view. "It's beautiful, Grandma," Lily said, her face pressed close to the screen. "Do you miss us?" "I miss you," I replied honestly, but not in a sad way. In a love you but I'm happy where I am way. "That makes sense," Amy chimed in. "Like how I miss you all at college but wouldn't want to be anywhere else." Her comparison startled me with its accuracy. This was exactly the feeling: love coexisting with independence, connection without dependency. After the call, I sat at the small cottage table with my journal, trying to capture something I was beginning to understand. I've spent so much of my life believing that love meant proximity, that caring meant constant availability. But here, thousands of miles from everyone I love, I feel more connected to them than I have in years. Maybe because for the first time, I'm bringing my whole self to the relationship, not just my service. The next afternoon, I walked to Maeve's cottage, which proved to be about a 15-minute stroll along a path bordered by hedgerows bursting with early spring growth. Her home was smaller than mine, but overflowing with personality. Books stacked everywhere, paintings covering the walls, herbs hanging from wooden beams to dry. The wisdom circle consisted of 6 women ranging in age from late 50s to mid-70s. Each had a story. Sinead, who'd left her corporate career at 60 to become a beekeeper. Bridget, who'd returned to school for archaeology after her husband died. Nora, who'd spent 5 years sailing solo around the Mediterranean. Claire, who'd started a women's shelter in Belfast. And Moira, who'd moved to this remote area after retiring from social work to write poetry. As we sipped tea and shared homemade scones, these women's stories washed over me like inspiration and validation combined. Each had experienced what Maeve called the great turning, that moment when you stop living for others and start living as yourself. It's different for everyone, Sinead explained, spreading local honey on her scone. Mine was when my last child moved out, and I realized I'd defined myself by motherhood for so long, I didn't know who I was alone. For me, added Bridget, it was my husband's death. Suddenly, I had permission to pursue dreams I'd shelved for 30 years. Sometimes it's illness that wakes us up, Nora said, glancing at me meaningfully. Other times, like with Claire, it's seeing too much suffering in the world and deciding you need to do something different with your remaining years. I found myself sharing my story, the gradual takeover of my life by family needs, the collapse, in the grocery store, the difficult process of establishing boundaries, and finally this trip to Ireland. You're in the middle of it, Moira observed. The great turning. That's why you're here, even if you don't fully know it yet. What do you mean? Ireland calls to women in transition, Maeve said simply. Always has. Something about the landscape, the energy, the way time moves differently here. You're not just on vacation, Maggie. You're being transformed. Over the following week, I fell into a routine that felt like coming home to a life I'd always been meant to live. Mornings began with watercolor painting at different locations around the property. Afternoons were for walks, reading, or simply sitting with a cup of tea watching the light change across the water. Evenings meant journaling by the fire, occasionally video calling home, but mostly just being present with my own thoughts. I began to notice changes in myself. My sleep deepened, my dreams became vivid and meaningful. My appetite shifted. I craved simpler foods, wanted less, and enjoyed more. Even my posture changed. I caught glimpses of myself in windows and was startled by how upright I stood, how relaxed my shoulders had become. One morning, while painting near a fairy fort, as the locals called certain ancient circular earthworks, I experienced something I can only describe as profound clarity. Not about any specific decision, but about the nature of my life going forward. I saw with sudden certainty that I could never return to being everyone's solution. Not because I didn't love them, but because I'd finally understood that constantly. Solving other people's problems wasn't helping anyone grow. I'd been a cushion against life's natural consequences, preventing the very struggles that build strength and wisdom. More than that, I saw my role as grandmother with new eyes. Instead of being indispensable, I could be inspirational. Instead of doing for them, I could model what it meant to live authentically. My independence wasn't selfish. It was the greatest gift I could give. That afternoon, I walked to the nearby village for supplies. The shopkeeper, having seen me several times now, greeted me like an old friend. "You're looking well," Mrs. O'Brien observed as she rang up my groceries. "Ireland agrees with you." "It's not just Ireland," I replied. "It's the space to breathe, to think, to remember who I am." "Ah," she nodded knowingly. "That's what this place does best. Gives you permission to be yourself again." On my way back to the cottage, I encountered an elderly man repairing a stone wall along the path. He looked up as I approached, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "American?" he asked, though my accent had probably given me away from a distance. "Yes, staying at the O'Sullivan cottage for the week." "Beautiful spot. I built the wall around that garden 40 years ago." He gestured toward my temporary home. "Come back to it every few years when it needs tending." We talked as he worked, his hands placing stones with the confidence of decades of practice. He asked about my life, and I found myself telling this stranger about my journey, not just to Ireland, but through the past year of transformation. "Sounds like you've been building your own boundaries," he observed, "like these stone walls. Keep the sheep where they belong. Keep the garden growing strong. The metaphor struck me. I had been building boundaries, not to keep people out, but to keep the right energies in, to protect the tender growth of my rediscovered self. That's exactly right. He paused in his work, studying the wall with satisfaction. Walls need maintenance, you know. Storms knock them down, time loosens the stones. But if you keep tending to them, they'll last generations. As I continued my walk home, his words echoed in my mind. Boundaries weren't a one-time establishment. They required ongoing attention and adjustment. I would need to keep tending mine, especially when I returned home and faced the familiar pressures. That evening, I received an unexpected email from David. Not about logistics or problems, but a simple message. Maggie, I've been thinking a lot while you've been away. Jennifer and I had a long conversation about how differently our family functions with you in Ireland. Not worse, just different. We're all stepping up, handling our own responsibilities, communicating more directly with each other. I think you've given us an unintended gift by establishing your boundaries and taking this trip. We're becoming more capable, more appreciative, and honestly, more respectful of everyone's individual needs. Thank you for showing us how to be a healthier family. Enjoy your last few days. We'll be excited to hear about your adventures when you're ready to share them. I read the email 3 times, each reading bringing tears to my eyes. This was the validation I hadn't known I needed, confirmation that my choice to prioritize my own life was actually benefiting everyone. My final days in Ireland passed in a beautiful blur. I completed 6 watercolor paintings, filled most of my journal, and took more walks than I could count. Maeve invited me for a farewell dinner with the Wisdom Circle, where the women gifted me with a hand-knitted scarf in shades of the Irish Sea. To keep you warm during your next transformation, Claire said with a wink. Next transformation? Oh, this is just the beginning, Bridget assured me. The great turning keeps turning. You'll see. On my last morning at the cottage, I woke before dawn and walked to my favorite spot overlooking the bay. The sunrise painted the sky in colors I'd learned to mix on my palette. Rose madder, cadmium orange, ultramarine blue fading to pale gray. Sitting there, watching the day begin, I felt a completeness I couldn't remember ever experiencing. Not the satisfaction of a checked-off to-do list or the relief of a crisis averted, but the deep peace of being exactly where I belonged, doing exactly what felt right. I pulled out my journal for one final entry in Ireland. 3 weeks ago, I arrived here as a woman reclaiming her life from the edges where she'd been pushed. I leave as someone who understands that the edges were an illusion. I was always at the center of my own story. I just forgot how to read it. The landscape here taught me that transformation isn't a destination, but a continuous process, like the eternal dance between sea and shore. I'm not returning home fixed or finished. I'm returning with tools for ongoing growth, with clarity about my worth, and with joy in my capacity for adventure. My family will be different when I return, not because they've changed, but because I see them differently. They are not my responsibility to manage, but my joy to love. And I am not their resource to deplete, but their inspiration to flourish independently. Something fundamental has shifted, not just in my circumstances, but in my very cells. I am Maggie Thompson, grandmother, mother, friend, artist, adventurer, woman who knows her own mind and follows her own compass. The girl who married Tom 40 years ago would recognize me now, even though we've traveled such different paths. She would approve, I think, of who I've become. The taxi arrived as the morning mist was lifting, revealing a crystalline blue sky that seemed to promise continued clarity. As we drove away from the cottage, I turned back once to fix the image in my memory. The small stone house, the rolling green fields, the wide expanse of sea and sky that had witnessed my transformation. At Dublin Airport, I had a 4-hour layover before my flight home. Instead of rushing through duty-free shops or finding a quiet corner to wait, I sat in a cafe with my laptop and booked my next trip. November in Scotland, 6 days in Edinburgh, to explore my artistic side more fully. As I hit the purchase button, I laughed out loud, causing other travelers to glance my way. The old Maggie would have consulted everyone, coordinated schedules, felt guilty for spending money on herself. The new Maggie simply decided and acted, trusting that the family would adapt as they had this time. The flight home gave me time to process the magnitude of what had happened during these 3 weeks. I hadn't just taken a vacation, I'd crossed a threshold. The woman boarding the plane back to Oregon was fundamentally different from the one who'd left. I thought about my family waiting at home, about the conversations we'd need to have, the continued boundary setting that would be required. But instead of anxiety, I felt confidence. I had proof now that they could flourish without my constant management. More importantly, I had proof that I could flourish by prioritizing my own journey. When we began our descent into Portland, I felt ready. Not just to return home, but to continue inhabiting the life I'd reclaimed. Ireland had been the setting, but the real transformation had happened within me, a recognition of my inherent worth that no amount of service to others could diminish or enhance. Jennifer met me at the airport, alone as requested. We hugged tightly, and I could feel something different in her embrace. Respect, perhaps, or simply relief that I was back. "You look incredible, Mom," she said, studying my face. "Like yourself, but more so. I feel like myself, but more so." During the drive home, she told me about the family's adventures while I was away. Not just the successes I'd already heard about, but the struggles too. The dinner that burned, the forgotten homework, the scheduling conflicts they'd had to resolve themselves. "We stumbled a lot," she admitted, "but we figured it out. All of us, including me. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too. And Mom, I owe you a real apology, not just for taking advantage of your help, but for not seeing you as a complete person all these years. You've always been more than just my mom and the kids' grandmother. It took you going away for us to recognize that." Her words brought tears to my eyes, but they were clean tears, without the complexity of resentment or relief I would have expected months earlier. My house felt different, or perhaps I felt different in it. The kids had clearly been there. I could see signs of their presence everywhere. But it also still felt like mine, like a space that belonged to me first and hosted others by invitation, rather than obligation. That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner. Not at my house, as had been tradition, but at a local restaurant where we could meet as equals rather than falling into old patterns of me hosting and serving. The conversation flowed easily, everyone sharing stories, opinions, plans. Ben showed me photos from the science fair. Lily demonstrated a dance move in the restaurant aisle, and Amy talked about college preparations with an excitement tempered by realistic planning rather than anxiety. David and Jennifer navigated their children's needs seamlessly, redirecting behavior, answering questions, maintaining the kind of consistent parenting presence I'd been providing for 8 years. They didn't need me to manage, they needed me to engage. As dessert arrived, Amy raised her water glass. A toast to Grandma, for showing us all how to live authentically and courageously. "Here, here," David seconded, and everyone joined in. Looking around the table at these people I loved so deeply, I felt the rightness of our new dynamic. They were my family, not my life's work. I could love them fully while maintaining my own identity, my own dreams, my own adventures. That night, unpacking in my bedroom, I placed my Irish journals on the bookshelf next to ones I'd started keeping since returning from the Coastal Medical Center. A timeline of transformation, visible evidence of a life reclaimed. My phone buzzed with a text from Maeve in Ireland. "Thinking of you on your first night home. Remember, the transformation continues. Stay curious, stay brave. Your Irish grandmothers. Bless you." I smiled, responding with a photo of my view, not the Atlantic Ocean, but the Douglas fir trees outside my Oregon window. Different beauty, same sense of belonging. That Sunday, I started a new routine. Instead of managing everyone else's schedules, I claimed Sunday mornings for myself. Art class at the community center, followed by lunch with Helen Rodriguez and other friends, then whatever called to me in the afternoon. The family adapted, planning around my unavailability rather than expecting me to schedule around theirs. Months passed, and the new patterns solidified into a healthier family dynamic. I remained involved but not enmeshed, supportive but not enabling. When Lily asked for help with a project, I'd spend a focused hour with her, then pass the responsibility back. When Ben needed a ride somewhere, I'd say yes if I was available or suggest alternatives if I wasn't. When Amy called from college needing advice, I listened carefully but stopped short of solving problems for her. My own life filled out in ways I hadn't anticipated. The water aerobics class led to joining a hiking group appropriate for seniors. The Irish paintings I'd done led to selling 3 pieces at a local art fair. The journal writing evolved into a blog about reinvention after 60, which unexpectedly gained a following among women experiencing similar transformations. On the anniversary of my collapse in the grocery store, I took myself out for lunch at a quiet bistro. As I sat alone with a book and a glass of wine, I reflected on the year's journey, from crisis to clarity, from depletion to abundance, from invisible to vibrantly present. A text came in from Amy. "Grandma just realized what day it is. Thank you for almost dying so you could teach us all how to really live. Love you hugely." I laughed at her characteristically blunt wisdom. My near death had indeed taught us how to live, not just survive. It had been the catalyst for profound change that rippled through our entire family system. That evening, I walked through my neighborhood as winter settled over Riverside. Lights glowed in windows, families moved through their evening routines. Life continued its eternal cycle. But my relationship to it all had shifted. I was no longer the exhausted woman trying to hold everything together. I was simply Maggie, living my own life while loving others freely. My phone rang as I neared home. It was Jennifer. "Hi, Mom, just checking in. Want to come for dinner Wednesday? David's making his famous pasta." "I'd love to, but I have photography class that night." "How about Friday?" "Perfect. Hey, Mom?" "Yes?" "I just wanted to say, you've taught us so much this year. About boundaries, about self-care, about what healthy love looks like. I hope I can model the same strength for my kids that you've shown us." "You already are, sweetie. Every time you and David handle something independently, every time you respect my schedule, every time you show the kids they can solve their own problems, you're modeling healthy relationships." After hanging up, I stood on my front porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere in Ireland, Maeve and the Wisdom Circle women were probably gathering around a fire, sharing stories and tea. In Scotland, there were cobblestone streets waiting for my next adventure. In Oregon, my family was living their lives with new competence and appreciation. And here was me, complete in myself, connected but not chained, loving but not lost in. Thus, the girl who'd married Tom would indeed recognize this woman, not despite the journey, but because of it. As I opened my front door, entering the peace of my own space, my own life, my own story, I smiled at the profound simplicity of what I'd learned. The most loving thing you can do for your family is to live your own life fully. Everything else flows from that truth. I was no longer the invisible grandmother sacrificing herself to hold everyone together. I was the visible, vital, autonomous woman who had finally learned that self-preservation wasn't selfish. It was the foundation for sustainable love. And that, I thought as I turned off the porch light and headed inside, was the lesson that would keep transforming us all for years to come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.